Rob, I wake up this morning, as probably did you.
Yeah, that's a
and
big
I'm hearing
story.
all this stuff about Scottie Scheffler, the #1 golfer in the world, and he's arrested and, a felony and a couple misdemeanors against a police officer. Rob G, you want to explain briefly what happened? I mean, most people know, but you want to kind of give a brief summary just for those that might not be aware of what happened with Scottie Scheffler?
Sure. So first and foremost, what happened was there was a road closure at Valhalla because, unfortunately, a pedestrian was killed in a traffic accident. That should be the bigger story, right?
Right.
But because of that, they shut down the streets, and the driveway through Valhalla is very narrow, as people know who have been there. And they were only letting in players who had to get ready for their tee time, or people associated who had to get their tee time very early. And Scheffler had a marked vehicle. He was supposed to be given access. The cops didn't want him to go through, so he decided to drive up on the side median to get through. And an officer was very upset about that, attached himself to the car, was basically, quote unquote, dragged for 10 yards or so.
Now, let me ask this, Rob G.
Mm-hmm.
The story I read was Scheffler, he said he was in the back seat. So he wasn't driving, right?
I'd have to clarify that because
I didn't see them state unequivocally that he wasn't driving, but in one of his quotes, he said, I was just sitting in the back seat, which makes sense. I mean, I'm sure he does have a driver to drive him in.
Right. They think they almost all do. Yeah.
Yeah. So that wouldn't, so if indeed, because I know they said that his car took off, right? After so maybe that cop or police officer did get dragged. That I wouldn't think, be on Scottie Scheffler. Like, he doesn't seem concerned about these charges. You know what I mean? He seems calm.
Right. And so the officer asked him to get out of the car, and according to ESPN's Jeff Darlington, once Scheffler rolled down the window, he was pulled out of the car and eventually was arrested, for, as you alluded to, assaulting a police officer and several other charges. He was handcuffed. He was taken to jail. He had the mugshot and everything. And because this was basically seen as one big misunderstanding, he was released and was still able to make his tee time because of the delay from earlier, because of the pedestrian being killed.
Nobody else would be making
right.
it. No, nobody.
But
they don't work that quickly.
But I think that was the right thing to let him. I think that was the right thing to let him out.
I'm not so sure that if he was anybody else under the same exact circumstances that he would be let out. It's just that he's
totally
a golfer.
Agree.
He's just that he's a celebrity.
And he had a T team.
No,
I totally agree with you.
That's it. Like it could be a misunderstanding with you or me, and Chris, you wouldn't be out of prison that quickly. It's just,
but I'm not mad at this. They should have never, and I don't know who's at fault, but he shouldn't have been hemmed up like that when he's just on his way to a freaking PGA event. I mean, so I'm glad that he got out quickly. And what was interesting too, he did not, according to the reports, he didn't tell them like, hey, I'm Scottie Scheffler. Like, I'm in this event. Like, I think he may have said he's got a tee time or he's got a golf, but I know the story said he did not tell them who he was. I would have been telling them who I was. Not in a braggadocious way or arrogant way. You know who I am, but just
I'm
let them
Chris
know,
Broussard.
Hey,
you know who I am?
I'm Chris Broussard. I have to be on the air in 20 minutes. Like, we're doing, you know what I mean? We're doing a show from here. That's why we're trying to get it. So something like that type of thing. But
well, you know what's interesting about that, Chris, is ESPN's Jeff Darlington, who was the one who was all over this all morning because he was on location. He said after Scheffler was arrested, another officer came up and said, hey, who was that we just arrested? And then they found out, and that made him expedite the whole process. But
that's the thing. That's baffling that nobody said who he was.
Well, he ain't Tiger Woods. Like, you don't recognize him right away.
I get that they didn't recognize him, but nobody said, hey, this is Scottie Scheffler. Even the driver, if indeed Scheffler wasn't driving, hey, this is Scottie Scheffler. He just won the PGA event. He's got a 10 a.m. tee time, whatever. We're just trying to get in a little work. I'm shocked that nobody said that.
Well,
shocked.
Yeah, and then
Rob, if you were in that back seat, wouldn't you have said, again, I'm not talking about, yo, you know who I am. I'm talking about, hey, officer, I'm here to work and I've got to be on the air in 30 minutes. Like,
right. No,
you wouldn't say something like
it is surprising that it would go that far without them really knowing or at least having a conversation. But then you don't know, like, when they went to take him out or handcuff him, like, was he belligerent? Or, like, what was the – because usually you could have a conversation. It's surprising that they didn't have a conversation before you just slap cuffs on people.
Right. Well,
Right?
Scheffler did say that the other officers were very nice to him, very accommodating. And, you're surprised they didn't name drop himself. Are you more surprised by that or the fact that when he did get out of jail, about 90 minutes later, he's teeing it up and he shoots 5 under to stay in contention here at the PGA Championship?
That's pretty impressive, Chris,
props.
right there.
Major props.
But we've seen some stuff before. Remember the Kobe during the rape case, Chris? They were flying him back and forth. He played throughout that whole thing. That would never happen today, but during that time, you remember the Lakers were flying him back and forth to court.
No, I was covering that series for the New York Times, and Kobe was phenomenal.
Yeah.
That's when Shaq was consistently saying, he must have said it four times or something, like 4 or 5 times during that, either that series or the playoffs in general. He's the best player ever. He's Kobe. He's the best one to ever do it. And I remember I went up to Shaq after one of the games because Kobe was hitting 40s, 30-something, 40, some 40-point games or at least one. And I said, well, Shaq, you've been saying Kobe's the best player ever. I said, what about Mike? And he was like, what about Mike?
Okay,
that's what he said. What about him? Like,
yeah, okay.
So
the guy was 6-0 in the NBA Finals, 6 MVP.
But Kobe, to your point, Rob, was balling.
No, right during that time,
Kobe was killing. And I do think sometimes, Rob, if you're in a situation like that where you just know, like whether it's something like Kobe was going through or this situation where you're rushed, you almost, Rob, don't have time to think. It's like, look, I just got to get out there and play. Like, you know what I mean? You don't have time to ruminate on the moment.
No,
what this
you just
means,
perform.
the
You go back
pressure.
to
You're
into
just
what
like,
you
man,
do. Right.
Right. It's like when you and I wrote game stories on Deadline.
You
don't have time to ruminate and think. You got 45 minutes to write.
That's it. And you got to get it in. And
you got to get it in. And Rob, a lot of times with me, when we would have like that rare early afternoon game or something, and I'd have like 7 hours.
It would be brutal on you, right?
It would take me longer.
Yep.
Much longer. And I'm sitting here, why am I freaking,
right.
taking all this time?
Because you're overthinking it because you have time.
Yes.
And when you don't have time, then we had an old saying in the baseball press box, just write it. Like, you don't have time to think about it, Chris. You got 45 minutes, like you said. Just write it. You're not trying to be cute.
Right. And I think that may have been some similar to the mentality that Scheffler had. Look, hopefully there's no issues coming out of this. He seems to, have a good attitude about it. It was just a misunderstanding. Obviously, it didn't hurt his game. And so, hopefully everything will be all right from this. And obviously, Rob, we want to send condolences out to the family of the person who was killed. It was a vendor, an employee for a vendor at the event. And very
sad.
Unfortunate. Yeah, so prayers out to their family. All right, 877-99 on Fox. What are your thoughts? Scottie Scheffler shows a tremendous ability to compartmentalize, and he's right there near the top of the leaderboard, tied for 4th right now at the top of the leaderboard after a crazy day.